At UFC Vegas 57, Shavkat Rakhmonov continued his impressive run as he submitted Neil Magny. This was Rakhmonov's first big test in the UFC, and it goes without saying that he definitely passed it with flying colors. Rakhmonov's record was 3-0 in the UFC heading into this fight, whereas Neil Magny was on the back of two big wins over Geoff Neal and Max Griffin respectively. Magny, being the more experienced of the two in this fight, had the opportunity to spoil Rakhmonov's rise in the UFC's Welterweight Division. However, that wasn't the case to be. Rakhmonov once again looked very dominant out there as he submitted Magny in the second round of the fight. So, starting off the fight, Magny was almost immediately on the back foot as he faced some early adversity when Rakhmonov dropped him with a jab. And the one thing that I noticed regarding Rakhmonov in this fight is that he was quite easily capable of keeping Magny down on the mat by pressuring him with his large body frame. So, as the first round progressed, Rakhmonov was being completely dominant with his wrestling, and to add to Magny's misery, he was constantly working on his body with some brutal ground and pound shots. One of the best aspects regarding Rakhmonov's game is that he is constantly working on his opponents while dominating them on the mat with his wrestling. In this case, he simply isn't just laying and preying on Magny for the entire 5 minutes. As you saw, he kept hitting Magny at every opportunity he got with those ground strikes. In the final minute of that first round, Magny almost desperately attempted a heel hook. Once again, credits to Rakhmonov for his sharp movement as he ended the round by landing some more ground strikes, and by the end of that first round, it definitely looked like Neil Magny was in a lot of trouble even before the fight could begin properly. And for Rakhmonov, that first round was a showcase of what he is truly capable of doing in terms of his wrestling and his ground game. Round number 2, and Neil Magny started off by connecting a solid jab, but in return, Rakhmonov invited him to do it once again. This time, Rakhmonov dodged the jab with some smooth head movement and connected with one of his own. In the early stages of round number 2, Rakhmonov was showcasing more of his striking until he took Magny down once again, and it was more of the same, as we saw in round number 1. Throughout the fight, all Magny tried was to defend himself, and right in the closing stages of round number 2, as Rakhmonov was dominating Magny, the latter decided to push his head towards Rakhmonov's hips, exposing his neck in the process and allowing Rakhmonov to get the guillotine, and with just 4 seconds remaining in round number 2, Magny had no other option but to submit. Another huge win in the books for Shavkat Rakhmonov, and what's even more impressive is that he made sure that the fight didn't go into the third round. I mean, in case you didn't know already, Rakhmonov has seen the third round just once throughout his entire professional career so far. So, with that being said, now we move on to the bigger topic. Who could be Shavkat Rakhmonov's next possible opponent in the UFC? Now, Nomad did call out Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, but there is no way that the UFC should book this fight under any circumstances. I mean, Wonderboy is a fan favorite, but more importantly, he's in his late 30s at the moment, whereas Rakhmonov is in his absolute prime at the age of 27. And on top of that, we all know what someone of Rakhmonov's credentials would do to a pure striker like Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. It's going to be a lot more worse than witnessing the Wonderboy versus Belal Muhammad fight. Some of us might argue that all Belal did was lay and prey on Wonderboy, but Rakhmonov isn't simply just going to lay and prey on Thompson. Instead, he is going to out-grapple him by a mile, and at the same time, he's going to make sure that he hits Wonderboy with all those brutal ground strikes at the same time. So, Wonderboy versus Rakhmonov is a definite no for me. And on top of that, for someone of Rakhmonov's caliber, a win over Wonderboy isn't going to do much for him either. So, what are the options for Rakhmonov going forward? Considering that he just defeated the number 10 ranked Neil Magny, Rakhmonov is going to move up 5 spots in the welterweight ranking. So that leaves us with the most realistic option for Shavkat, the number 9 ranked Sean Brady. Personally, I think that this is the most interesting matchup for both men at this stage of their careers. Brady is slowly proving to be a dark horse in this division and is on the back of a big win over Michael Chiesa. The winner of Rakhmonov versus Brady is slowly going to rise their way into the UFC welterweight title picture going forward. Another solid option for Rakhmonov is the number 6 ranked Vicente Luque. Luque, much like Sean Brady, is another dark horse in the welterweight division. Until his last fight against Belal Muhammad, I did consider Luque as someone who is very well rounded, while standing up and on the ground as well. But obviously, Luque has to make a few changes and improvements on the ground if he's going to survive against Rakhmonov. Finally, the last realistic option I have for Shavkat is a fight against Belal Muhammad himself. Belal is ranked number 5, and despite all the criticism he has received in recent fights, I think Muhammad has the perfect opportunity to shut down his critics with a big win over Rakhmonov. If you look into this fight from Belal's perspective, he knows that he won't be able to just lay and pray on Rakhmonov. He knows that he will have to stay active if he decides to take the fight to the ground against Shavkat. And a win here could very well make Belal a future title contender. You never know. Nevertheless though, these are the 3 options for Shavkat at the moment. I know that he did call out Nate Diaz, Jorge Masvidal and Stephen Thompson, but personally, none of these 3 fights will make sense to me. I mean, I'm sure that Shavkat is going to get himself a title shot in the near future, and a win over either of these guys won't help his case. Rather, all these 3 fights are money fights and will help Shavkat gain a massive popularity and a big paycheck. So if it was up to me, I would put Shavkat in there with someone like Brady, or if the UFC really wants to bank on him in a similar way they did with Khamzat Chimaev, then they could just go ahead and book Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Belal Muhammad. I mean, there is no doubt that the UFC has found their next big star in the welterweight division following the rise of Khamzat Chimaev, and the fight between Chimaev and Rakhmonov is definitely going to be a money fight that they should try and book in the future, regardless if the title is on the line or not. Well, that's it for this video. Let me know in the comments who you think Shavkat Rakhmonov should fight next. Thanks for watching.